Hello everyone, Robert Saunders with Dell Technologies, talking again today about something very exciting, an automated VM deployment against a Dell Private Cloud that was built with the Dell Automation Platform. We talked about a lot of things there, but we're going to go through some use cases here of this automated VM deployment using a blueprint, of deploying a blueprint, which is a VM, or will be a VM, update that same VM with a blueprint, and reclaim the virtualization resources when we're all done. So let's go ahead and get started here. So again, if you've seen the previous videos, here we are at the Dell Automation Platform, the orchestrator. We also have the portal, but we're going to be doing all of our work from the orchestrator today. So just to recap here, there's a lot of probably pieces here in our inventory infrastructure here. I see highlighted here the VMware one. We also have a bunch of other connectivity here, storage, Kubernetes, there's Red Hat, all kinds of things here. But this one I have the red box on is a vSphere cluster that we deployed with the Dell Private Cloud enabled by the Dell Automation Platform. And that is the cluster that I'm going to put a virtualization instance, actually a few, against here in just a second in this demo. So we'll look at the external connections here. We see vCenter stamp1.tme.lab. That's one of our labs that we have where we do all of our demos from. And I added that cluster as an external connection to the orchestrator. I can browse this connection now. I see my clusters and my hosts, ESXi 0, 1, 2, and 3. If you've seen the previous demos, you know it's the exact same environment that we're using here. And then any virtual machines. Now let's take a moment here. You see I have a couple templates, or what some customers call golden images, in their environments. I have them stopped. I built these VMs as templates, and I'm going to use them. I'm going to call them from the blueprint to build out additional virtual machines, or build a virtual machine from a golden image. That's pretty cool and very powerful. So back over to clusters and hosts, out to general. Here is the same look of those VMware configure templates from a vSphere perspective. If you're familiar with that, you know exactly what you're looking at there. I have them in a templates folder. And there is the cluster that we deployed with Dell Private Cloud previously. In fact, you even see the Dell Private Cloud VM running there. And then, of course, the templates again. So here is the deployment, just to rehash or review. This is the VMware deployment that we did with Dell Private Cloud and deployed that cluster quite a few weeks ago, actually. So now let's go over to this Linux VM, vSphere, Rail, or Ubuntu 1.1.0, what I called it. A lot of pieces there in the mix, but all built as a custom blueprint that we can deploy anywhere we'd like. In this case, it's going to be against the Dell Private Cloud cluster. There's a deployment target. Remember, we saw that earlier in the external connections, vCenter stamp1.tme.lab. That is going to be my target cluster. I'm going to call this deploy Ubuntu. Now I can load from JSON, from Git, from a CMDB, however I want to load the configurations to build this VM. Very easy and very flexible. I'm using a JSON file here. There's my connection details. It's going to load my, or use my SSH public and private keys so I can connect. I'll show you that. And then I'm doing a Linux 2204. I'm giving it a name. I've got a resource pool if I'd like. I'm giving a data store, in this case is the power store that we use for the Dell Private Cloud. An OS disk, 120, more on that in a little bit when we do an update. And there's the 3 nodes part of the cluster. And I'm going to give the management network, just for completeness here, and that's actually going to be a distributed switch, and the additional IP config and the static IP that I'm going to give this VM, because that's one of the big pieces here when this deploys. It's going to configure all the networking from that golden image template. Now I'm going to deploy a Red Hat at the exact same time. I just did Ubuntu. Again, same JSON. I'm going to move through this here, exact same config, except it's going to 201 instead of 200 as a static IP. So now they're both going here at the same time. I can kick off a lot of these if I'd like. Fast forward through here. This VM is going out and deploying. The beauty here is all the logging that I get to see, everything that's going on at every step, and even some interesting weighting about CPU and host capacity to make sure we put the VM on the right host. That's pretty powerful. There's the clone of the virtual machine from Ubuntu that we started out first. Now there goes the Rail one. So now they're both standing up there, going into that demo folder. Ubuntu's coming up first. That's the first one we started. And done. Fast forward here to now SSHing in. Remember the host keys or the SSH keys were added for me automatically. So if I just do a hostname CTL, I see the Ubuntu 01 demo is there. Awesome. Same thing at the Red Hat one. Or against the Red Hat one, RH10 Dell, there it is. Perfect, that was super easy to do. Super easy, and I can do a lot of these VMs at the same time if I'd like. So let's go take a look at the details here about what got written with this deployment. So I can go back in here, I can reference this, I could export this if I'd like to keep these configurations. I can see the capabilities on the right, the machine name, the username, the IP, and then everything I passed in on the left. Again, I can use to reference at a later date the who, what, when, where, and why of a deployment. Now, let's go update a deployed VM and review the drift as needed. Remember I talked about the storage a little bit ago. We're going to use the Ubuntu machine here, and we're going to change the storage size in flight. So there's the OS disk size of 120 GB. I'm going to change that. I'm going to change it to 150 gigabytes here. So now let's look at the drift. This is pretty cool and pretty powerful. You see I filtered there with the little slider button there. I said display drift only because I only changed the disk size. I went from 120 on the left to 150 on the right. That's the planned configuration change. So I'll go ahead and kick this off, and this is going to go off and do its updating. You see the reconfigure virtual machine is now executing, and quickly it's all done. So now that Ubuntu VM is going to be at 150 gigabytes. I can browse over to the virtual machines here in the orchestrator tab, and alongside the templates, I see the two VMs now here that are also running that we deployed with the blueprints. That's pretty cool and that's pretty powerful. Kind of a single pane of glass there. I can also edit the virtual machine details here if I'd like with regards to CPU and memory right here in the orchestrator. Again, also very powerful. So let's take a look here at the disk to make sure everything wrote correctly. We're going in and we do have to do a rescan, which is something we could actually automate if we'd like to. So I'll rescan real quick. Now I see 150. And previously, right up above there, I had the SDA at 120, so before and after the rescan. So I know my disk add did work correctly. That's awesome. Now, let's say I want to shut down the VM and reclaim those resources. So I want to use the same blueprint I used to deploy to do the exact same thing, except in reverse. Administrators love this, so they can clean up and reclaim all the resources back to a steady state. So now I'm going to go to this VM here, or this deployment actually, and I'm going to say uninstall. So I click on the update there, and I'm going to uninstall actually both of them. So update, and run the workflow here for uninstall again, click OK, and that's going to go off, and it's going to uninstall both of those VMs and clean up that environment. It looks like VMware is also doing a patch here at the same time, but you can see there that it was powering off the VMs and uninstalling them. Yes, it is executing a blueprint also for uninstalling. The logging, again, is also there, fully logging, great detail there. And we can see the deleting of the virtual machine. There's the Red Hat one and the Ubuntu one up top. In the demo folder, it's empty from a vSphere perspective. And then, of course, the templates will remain. I can use them again for additional VM deployments. Very powerful here, what we can do with custom blueprints deploying VMs against a Dell Private Cloud cluster enabled by the Dell Automation Platform. More monitoring there. We can see those VMs are gone, just the templates remain. Again, very powerful. Thanks for watching. Appreciate it.